that starts with the Bengals-Ravens game that just went down. Ravens end up winning the game 34-20. I perfectly predicted that the Ravens were going to score 34 points. I was a little bit off with the Bengals. I said 34-28. And last week you predicted that the Bengals would win 27-24. So with that being said, we talked about the Joe Burrow injury a little bit. How do you feel about Jake Browning leading this Bengals offense?
I don't feel confident.
He
I
looks solid.
he he did, and it's not really a knock on him because I think they'll be semi-competitive. But I mean, they're no longer a threat. I think.
Yep.
He looked comfortable in the pocket. He made some good reads, and he came in a tough spot. I think kind of when he came in, people expected that they were going to lose automatically at that point. Um, I think they win like a game or two. I
So
think
you,
they'll keep games competitive. I don't think they'll necessarily get blown out,
mhm.
but I don't really see them winning.
So
Like, I don't see them finishing above 500 now.
okay, so the
Essentially,
Jake Browning led Bengals. This is the rest of their schedule: Steelers, Jags,
loss,
Colts, Vikings,
loss.
Steelers, Chiefs, Browns. How many of those do you think are a win?
Oof. I think the Colts and Browns are their best bet at wins
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because they played the Steelers twice. Steelers are playing good ball. Jags are the Jags, so they're still playing, pretty solid. They're still playing well.
Mm-hmm.
Vikings
They're on a
look good.
renaissance. Same
No
thing with the
reason for me.
Colts.
No reason for me to think. Yeah, no reason for me to think they're gonna lose. And then the Chiefs are the Chiefs. They can be great. They can put up fucking 42 points on you at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Bengals aren't capable of that. They'll still score points, but they're not. If it's a shootout, yeah, they're gonna lose that shootout.
Yeah.
And then Browns are kind of a weird team to me. And I still think they lose that game. I just, I just don't foresee them, nor do I have confidence in winning
Any
these
of
tough
those
games, right?
games?
Because they got no, just the Colts and the Browns. I think are the best chances at winning
Yeah. And do you think they win them?
in their final 6 games. I think it's like 50-50,
Yeah.
right? Maybe 60-40. I don't. It's not a high percentage chance. Um, Jags definitely a loss. Chiefs definitely a loss. Steelers, I still think they could potentially split,
Mm-hmm.
but now I think it's more like a 30% chance kind of thing.
I think this Bengals team is one of those teams that are going to get 3 wins throughout the rest of the season. Now, if one of those wins or both those wins are against the Steelers or they end up beating the Colts, I could see them beating the Chiefs somehow, some way, because like they still are. They're a Super Bowl caliber team. Just because their Super Bowl caliber quarterback went down doesn't mean that the rest of the team is just MIA. Um,
Yeah,
Jake Browning
no, I
looked
agree.
capable at quarterback. He was looking about as good as Joe Burrow was, just like a little bit more, safer passes compared to Joe. Um,
Yeah,
and I'm
and
fine
that's
with
why I
that.
say I think they'll keep. Right, I am too. That's why I say they'll keep games competitive,
Right,
but not necessarily capable of winning a lot because I think some of these games are going to be shootout
right.
or like have that potential, right? So their opponent's just going to score points, i.e., the Chiefs,
Hmm.
potentially the Vikings and the Steelers and the Jags.
Yeah,
And I just don't think the Bengals offense is really capable of that. But this game against the Steelers, I think is going to tell us a lot about that, how the offense is going to look for the rest of the year.
yeah. And I mean,
Does
here's the thing, the
do the
Bengals.
Bengals score 20 plus? Right? Do they score 20 plus points? Maybe, maybe not. But if they can score up to 30, then I'll probably feel a little more comfortable about the rest of their schedule.
Yeah, and if the Bengals win this, they move into third place in the division against the Steelers.
Right.
So this is a big game for them. This is a big game for the Steelers because they need to stay alive in a tight division. So this is a heavyweight AFC North matchup, and I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be very close. But
I think it's gonna be like. I think it is gonna be a close game as well. I think probably within 10 points or so.
yeah, I'm thinking within 5.
I like it. I like it.
We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. Um,
Mm-hmm.
But on the Ravens side of the ball, you want to talk about pure dominance on offense. Lamar Jackson had another game with 300 yards over scrimmage, 2 touchdowns, no picks, only got sacked 3 times on a 16-yard loss. 16-26 completion rating on an average of 10.2 yards per pass. Obviously, Mark Andrews is out for the year. That's the big news coming out of this game, and
Yeah.
that was a rough tackle, rough injury to watch. But it happens. It's
You're pretty right about Odell Beckham because I believe you said he over 100 and a touchdown, and he got over the 100.
yeah, yeah. I was
So
thinking,
he had himself a game.
yeah, that made sense. And Nelson Aguilar, he put up some fantasy points too. He ended up being worth like 11 or 12, and I think that's what I predicted for him. And then I said Gus Edwards was going to be touchdown reliant, and that's exactly what he was. Without that 2 touchdowns, he was only worth what, 8 points, 9 points.
Yeah, just over 9 points.
So
because he had 62 on the ground and then 8 receiving on 2 catches. So
yep. So
yeah,
he was worth 9 points exactly without the touchdowns, and then throw the 12 points on there.
Yeah, you're dead on about Gus Edwards. So I mean, if you started him, you're pretty happy.
Yeah.
Pretty thankful for those 2 touchdowns. Otherwise, you might be kind of pissed.
Yeah. Yep. So
but that was good. All in all, good game.
Player I want to talk about from this game is Logan Wilson. Do you think that he's a dirty player?
Wait, what happened? I didn't see. I didn't watch the whole game.
So he's the one that made the tackle on the Mark Andrews play, on the Mark Andrews injury. He did what's called a hip sweep tackle, which
yeah. I heard about that.
Is what injured Mark Andrews. And he's made several tackles throughout the season that are very Vontaze Burfict-esque. So a lot of people are calling him a dirty player. I think that I don't think that he's dirty like Vontaze was, because Vontaze was trying to hurt people. I think Logan Wilson is just a hard-hitting player that is, trying his best. You can't high hit people anymore, and they're talking about banning the hip swing tackle.
Yeah, and they're calling for it. I saw that.
Like, it's getting to the point where it's like, what's a guy supposed to do? Like, you take away high hits because you're trying to save guys from concussions. Well, this was what people were saying back then, when high hits were getting banned, was, there's going to be a lot more leg injuries. There's going to be a lot more season-ending injuries, because, guys are going to have to hit around the waist and tear up legs. And we've seen that come to fruition over the past 5-6 years since those high hits got banned. And, I think it's just kind of the reality that if we want football to be a contact sport, then we need to respect that there's injuries that come along with it. Although I'm a Steelers fan, I hate to say it, I don't think Logan Wilson's a dirty player. I just think that he has had plays where he looks dirty. Every player, has plays that look like that. It doesn't matter if you're Minka Fitzpatrick on the Nick Chubb tackle. It doesn't matter if you're, it just doesn't matter on who you are. Just defensively, especially on the defensive side of the ball, your job is to hit people hard, and if you do that effectively, you get called dirty sometimes. I don't think Logan Wilson falls into that category, because when I think of a dirty player, like, here's the perfect debate: James Harrison versus Vontaze Burfict, right? James Harrison was renowned as a super dirty player. Vontaze Burfict is regarded as a super dirty player. The difference is James Harrison hit people hard, and was trying to sit them out for the game. Like, that's just how that was. So if you think that's dirty, then sure, he was a dirty player. But the difference is with Vontez Burfict was he was taking cheap shots to do that. Like James Harrison was doing legal hits that were hard. You know, compared to Vontez Burfict, circa the AB reception, circa I think he hit Steve Smith Jr. really hard, or Senior really hard on a cheap hit too. Those are cheap hits. What Logan Wilson did wasn't a cheap hit. He was just trying to make a tackle and disaster happened. And I think it kind of sucks for players that are hard hitters that are trying to, like Logan Wilson isn't necessarily like this athletic freak. He's just a very hard tackler that, that's what his game's built on, like a Robert Spillane type,
right.
For the Raiders. You're talking about a guy that is going to be a hard hitting type guy, and that's what their whole game's built on. Well, that's what the Bengals want. They want a thumper. And a thumper is starting to just become a synonym for being dirty, and I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, because I mean, if you want to make that argument, then you got to call so many defensive players from even 10 years ago dirty.
You gotta call Ray
10,
Lewis
15,
dirty.
20 years ago. Exactly. You got to call all the all-time greats dirty.
Yeah.
At that point, so it's like I don't get the argument. There's a difference between playing hard, playing physical, and being dirty.
Yeah. I think Logan
And
Wilson
I
at
don't
this
think it's
point of his
really
career is teetering on that line of being on the dirty side versus like just a hard hitter. But I still put him on the hard hitting side.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have a better argument to call freaking Mac Jones dirty than really Logan Wilson because he's had some questionable hits
That's true.
throughout his 2.5-year career so far. So
That's true. That's true. Um, Ravens defense came out to play. We seen Patrick Queen and Raquan Smith both have themselves a field day again. I circled on them last week, but that's a big deal. Getting 20 plus tackles at your middle linebacker spot, that's a huge deal. And that's something I always want to circle. They're not letting things get to the second level. When you're getting 20 plus tackles, for reference, the Bengals rushed the ball 23 times and they only had 136 yards on the ground collectively, and 40 of those coming from Jake Browning on scrambles. So, and a 19-yard long. So, like, it's just one of those things where it's like, we take that out of the equation, 96 yards on the ground, like, or even less than that, 89, because one of them was Joe Burrow on a scramble. So 89 yards on the ground, and that's how you end up looking at that 20 tackle number. They're not allowing those big chunk plays to come over them. They're getting those stops when they need to, like you're holding up that running attack. Realistically 89 yards, the stat sheet says 136 because of QB scrambles, but that's that's that. And they were holding down the middle of the field, not letting them get free receptions. Like Irv Smith walked out of the game with 0 receptions. Drew Sample walked out of the game with only 2 receptions, 19 yards. So, they're doing a really good job blocking up right there. Tyler Boyd was a player that I predicted to have a great game, and he didn't because, they were crossing him a lot and catching him right between Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith. 3 receptions, 22 yards on 6 targets. That's how you beat really good offenses, is having a really good center of the field. And I really want to circle that middle linebacking core for the Ravens.
Yeah. Like you said, like when you control that middle of the field, it changes the whole dynamic of that offense, of the opposing offense. It makes things so much harder because then they got to attack the outside and attack deep, and try to make you lay off the middle of the field. But the Ravens never did that.
Yep, exactly.
Because they have such great middle linebackers, such a great linebacking core as a whole, that they can that they don't have to do that, that they're not forced to and never will be.
Exactly.